Today, I'll talk about the SFCA and SFCR. The SFCA came into force in 2012 is a comprehensive approach to food safety covering aspects like inspection, safety, labeling, and advertising, import, export, and establishment of standards. And Safe Food for Canadian regulation came into force in 2019. They consolidate 14 sets of existing food regulations into a single set, improving consistency and reducing administrative burden. And then let's compare the SFCA FFCR with the FDA and FDR. So the FDA applies to all food sold in Canada, while FFCA and FFCR primarily focuses on food that is imported, exported, or traded inter-provincially, with some provisions also applying to intra-provincially traded foods. So this provision includes traceability requirements, labeling and advertising requirements, and certain standards and grades. And there are some real-life examples. A company exporting Canadian maple syrup to other countries need to comply with the SFCR. A butcher shop that slaughters food animals and sells the meat products within the same province may still need to comply with certain FFCR provisions. A food distributor that trades apples between Ontario and Quebec needs to comply with the SFCR. And then we'll talk about some exemptions to the SFCR. For instance, food carried on the conveyance for use by crew and passengers, food intended and used for analysis, evaluation, research, or exhibitions, and food not sold for use as human food are exempt from FFCR. But even if the SFCA and SFCR do not apply, such food must still be safe and meet applicable requirements of the FDA and FDR. Then there is roles and responsibilities. The SFCR outlines the responsibilities of food businesses and the CFIA. Food businesses are responsible for ensuring the safety and regulatory compliance of their food products. The CFIA is responsible for verifying compliance through inspection and surveillance activities and taking appropriate action when non-compliance is found. Comparatively, compliance is about following the rules, while enforcement is about what happens when rules are broken. And then we're gonna dive deep into the SFCR. The SFCR is divided into 16 parts, each dealing with a specific aspect of food safety and regulation. First, let's look at the part 1, interpretation and application. This part provides the definitions and scope of the regulations. It outlines the specific terms used throughout the SFCR and explains how they should be interpreted. This part also clarifies where and to whom the regulations apply, setting the groundwork for understanding the rest of the SFCR. For example, the term food is defined in this section, which applies to all subsequent parts of the SFCR where the term is used. This part helps ensure that there is no ambiguity about what is being referred to when certain terms are used in the regulations. Then let's move to Part 2, Trade. Part 2 establishes who needs to be licensed by the CFIA and sets the rules around trading food internationally and inter-provincially. It includes information on the foods and activities for which a license is required, general food safety requirements for all food traded internationally and inter-provincially, imports, exports, exceptions from the SFCR, and the non-application of some requirements for certain foods. And there are fundamental new elements of the SFCR. FFCR introduces 3 fundamental new elements: license, preventive controls, traceability, in Part 3, Part 4, and Part 5. Let's look at Part 3, license. Licensing enables the CFIA to authorize persons to conduct certain activities, identify food businesses, collect information about the activities of food businesses, and take responsive action when non-compliant activities are found. And then Part 4, preventive controls. This part is very important. It is based on Codex Alimentarius. This part includes 6 divisions. And Division 5, investigation, notification, compliance, and recall. We talked about this early, and you should remember which section is about which part. And then Division 6, preventive control plan. A preventive control plan is a written document that details how risks to your food and to the humane treatment of food animals are identified and controlled. Please remember that Section 86 to 89 state that food business needs preventive control plan. And then let's talk about the FSEP, HACCP, and Preventive Control Plan. In Canada, the Food Safety Enhancement Program, FSEP, is the national program that integrates HACCP principles to food production. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency, CFIA, developed FSEP to provide a more consistent approach to food safety. FSEP encourages the development and the implementation of HACCP systems in all federal registered establishments. The FSEP manual provides guidelines for creating a HACCP plan, including forms and appendices that can be used to document the plan. If a food business has a HACCP plan in place, as encouraged by FSEP, it is already well on its way to meeting the preventive control requirements of the SFCR. The preventive control plan might be considered as an expanded HACCP plan, as it also includes elements relating to consumer protection requirements, such as labeling, packaging, and standards of identity. And then let's talk about the exported food, preventive control plans, and license. In the context of exporting food, you need a license if you want to receive an export certificate or another export permission from the CFIA. This license validates that your business meets the necessary food safety standards and is authorized to export food. However, you do not need a license to export food if your sole activity is export, and you do not need an export certificate or another export permission from the CFIA. Similarly, if your sole activity is an export customer broker or freight forwarder, you do not need a license. In most cases, if you want to obtain a license under the CFIA, you will need to have a preventive control plan. So that's the relationship between these three concepts. And then let's move on to the key terms. Let's talk about the consumer prepackaged, prepackaged other than consumer prepackaged, and prepackaged. So consumer prepackaged, these are foods that are in their final packaging and are ready for sale to consumers for non-commercial purposes. For example, a box of cereal or a can of soup that you would buy at a grocery store. And prepackaged other than consumer prepackaged, this term refers to foods that are packaged in bulk containers, typically for commercial purposes. These are usually sold to businesses rather than directly to consumers. For example, a large bag of rice or a crate of vegetables that a restaurant might buy from a wholesaler. And prepackaged. This is a broader term that includes both of the above categories. Any food that is packaged before being sold, whether to consumers or businesses, is considered prepackaged. In essence, these terms are used to distinguish between foods that are packaged for direct sale to consumers and those that are packaged for sale to other businesses, with prepackaged serving as an umbrella term for both. And finally, let's talk about the documents incorporated by reference. There are 17 documents incorporated by reference into the SFCR, 11 by CFIA, such as standards of identify, 6 by third parties, such as grade requirements. So that's it for today. See you on next video.